Welcome back to the deep dive. We're doing something a little different today. Usually we're looking at things from 30,000 feet, but today we're flying much, much lower.
Yeah, specifically below 400 feet.
Exactly. We are talking about the uncrewed revolution. And I don't mean just, buying a gadget at the mall to fly around the backyard. I'm talking about the actual roadmap. How do you go from being a high school student to a certified commercial drone pilot?
It is a massive shift. I mean, we are literally watching the birth of a new trade. This isn't about flying robots anymore. It's about integrating a completely new class of aircraft into the national airspace system.
Right.
So we're moving from hobbyist to professional aviator, and the whole regulatory world is just scrambling to keep up.
That's the distinction I want to start with, the difference between a toy and a tool. Because we have, a lot of younger listeners, maybe parents of high schoolers, and they see these things buzzing around. But the sources we pulled, the actual FAA regulations, these heated reports from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, even college curriculum from places like Embry-Riddle, they all point to this being a really serious career path.
It absolutely is. And it's accessible, which is the wild part. You can be flying commercial missions before you can legally drive a car in some states.
Wow.
But you have to treat it like aviation, not like a video game.
Okay, so let's get into that. The barrier to entry. If I'm a teenager or just anyone looking for a career change and I want to fly a drone for money, real estate, inspections, whatever, I need that golden ticket.
The Part 107 certificate.
Part 107.
That's the rule book, 14 CFR Part 107. And you're right, it's the gatekeeper. So to even sit for the test, you have to be at least 16 years old.
Which feels really young for a federal license.
It is, but it actually aligns with the student pilot certificate for, regular airplanes. The other big one is language. You have to be able to read, speak, write, and understand English.
Okay, why is that so strict? If I'm just flying a drone 20 feet over a construction site, why does my English fluency matter so much?
Because you're never in a bubble. You're operating in the national airspace system.
Ah,
So if a medevac helicopter has to make an emergency landing nearby, or if you lose control and your drone flies towards an airport, you have to be able to talk to air traffic control or understand those emergency broadcasts instantly. Aviation is standardized on English for that exact reason. Safety just depends on clear communication.
that makes perfect sense. It's not about the flying, it's about the crisis management. So, okay, I'm 16, I'm fluent, I go to take the test. Is this like reading a pamphlet and answering a few questions?
Hardly. This is probably the biggest shock for most people. The initial aeronautical knowledge test is, it's legitimate aviation theory. You have to learn how to read sectional charts. You know those incredibly complex pilot maps that look like spaghetti thrown on a map of the world?
Yeah, I've seen those.
You need to understand airspace classifications, weather theory, and even micrometeorology.
Micrometeorology, what's that?
It's wind shear around buildings, thermal plumes coming off of big asphalt parking lots. When you're flying a machine that weighs under 55 pounds, a sudden gust of wind isn't just an annoyance, it's a real hazard.
So you pass this tough test, you get the card. You're officially an airman. But that card comes with a leash, right? Let's talk about the operational limits, because this is where things get, limited.
They do. The hard deck is 400 feet.
400 feet above ground level, AGL.
Exactly.
Why that number?
Right.
Why 400?
It's basically a buffer zone. Traditional manned aircraft, your Cessnas, helicopters, they generally have to stay above 500 feet unless they're taking off or landing, of course. So the FAA just carved out that little slice from 0 to 400 feet for drones to keep everyone separated.
But there's a loophole, right?
Right.
The structure exception.
I'd call it more of a necessity for industry. It's not really a loophole.
Okay.
Think about it. If you're inspecting a cell tower that's 1,200 feet tall, you can't just stop at 400 feet. So the rule lets you fly 400 feet above the top of that structure as long as you stay within a 400-foot bubble around it.
So you're basically riding a 400-foot safety bubble all the way to the top of the tower.
Precisely. It lets you do the job without becoming a hazard to a plane that might be cruising by at 1,500 feet because that plane has no business being that close to a tower anyway.
Got it. What about speed? The limit is 87 knots, which is about 100 miles per hour. That sounds pretty fast, but if we're talking about package delivery competing with trucks, isn't that a little slow?
It's a trade-off. It's all about kinetic energy. A 50-pound drone hitting something at 150 miles per hour is basically a missile. At 100, it's still dangerous, but the physics of the impact are very different. And besides, there's the visual line of sight rule. You have to be able to see the thing.
Right. VLOS. You have to see it with your own eyes. No binoculars.
Correct. And that, right there, is the biggest constraint on the entire industry right now. If you have to see the drone, you're tethered to it. You can't sit in a control center in, say, Nevada and inspect a pipeline in Alaska.
That's the BVLOS, the Beyond Visual Line of Sight.
The holy grail that everyone is chasing.
We'll get to that chase because that's where all the drama is. But first, the people problem. For a long time, flying over crowds was a hard no. It seems like the FAA has softened on that.
Soften might be the wrong word. I'd say they become more granular, more specific. They realized a blanket ban doesn't make sense when you've got drones that weigh 250 grams and drones that weigh 50 pounds. So they created categories, 1 through 4.
And this is where it gets really nerdy with the physics, isn't it?
Extremely. It's all based on injury severity. So category 1 is for your tiny drones under 0.55 pounds with protected propellers. You can fly those over people pretty freely because if one falls on your head, it's just annoying, not lethal.
Okay.
But categories 2 and 3 get measured in foot-pounds of kinetic energy.
Okay, translate that for us.
Well, category 2 limits the impact to 11 foot-pounds. To give you some perspective, getting hit by a Major League Baseball pitch is something like 80 to 100 foot-pounds.
Oh, wow. So 11 is not much.
It's quite low. It means the drone has to be designed to basically crumble on impact or have a parachute or frangible parts that break away before it hits someone.
So I can't just take my big, heavy cinema drone and hover it over a concert.
Definitely not. Not unless you somehow get a Category 4 airworthiness certificate, which is like getting one for a real airplane. The rule of thumb for most people is still just don't fly over open-air assemblies of people.
I want to pivot back to that student listener, the 15-year-old. They can't take the test yet. So what do? Are they just stuck playing with flight simulators?
Not at all. The industry knows there is a huge pilot shortage coming, not just for airlines, but for this entire uncrewed sector. So the FAA actually launched the Youth Drone Initiative to bridge that exact gap. It's for ages 11 to 18.
Is that just a PR thing or does it have teeth?
It's more of a framework. They connect youth groups with industry partners to focus on STEAM skills: science, technology, engineering, arts, math. But the real career pathway is at the collegiate level, the UAS Collegiate Training Initiative.
This is what really stood out to me. Schools like Embry-Riddle or the University of North Dakota are offering full-on degrees in this stuff. It's not just an elective.
It's a major. And look at what they're doing. Embry-Riddle uses virtual reality to speed up flight training. They have this massive alumni network of 160,000 people. But the real kicker is their RATP authority.
The Restricted Airline Transport Pilot Certificate. That's for flying jets, right?
Right. Normally, you need 1,500 flight hours to be a first officer at an airline. If you graduate from a program like Embry-Riddle's, you can do it in 1,000.
But why does a drone pilot need that?
I was hoping you'd ask that. Because the lines are blurring. The future pilot is someone who manages complex systems, whether they're in the cockpit or on the ground. Understanding the airspace at an airline level makes you incredibly valuable, especially for the big cargo drones that are coming.
And what about UND? They're working with NASA Tech.
Yeah, they've partnered with a company called Vigilant Aerospace. They're using a system called Flight Horizon, which is a detect and avoid system patented by NASA. So the students there are basically beta testing the air traffic control systems of the future. They're not just learning the rules, they're helping write them.
Which brings us perfectly to the controversy. Because right now, avoiding planes is the #1 problem. We have to talk about the Wild West in the sky and this fight between AOPA, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and the drone industry.
This is a battle for territory, pure and simple. The FAA is working on new rules, Part 108, to normalize beyond visual line of sight flying. And there's a provision in there that suggests drones might get right-of-way over crewed aircraft below 400 feet.
Whoa, say that again?
Drones might have right-of-way, unless the crewed aircraft has an electronic tracker called ADS-B.
So if I'm flying a crop duster, an old biplane, and I'm legally at 300 feet over a field, I have to yield to a delivery drone unless I buy some new piece of tech?
That's the proposal. And you can imagine why AOPA is furious. Their argument is that the burden of safety shouldn't be on the people who are already there. The drones, the newcomers, they should be the ones with the detect and avoid technology to see the plane, signal or not.
Can they do that? Can a drone really see a plane without an electronic handshake?
It's possible, but it's really, really hard and expensive. Amazon Prime Air actually had a big stumble with this. In October 2025, their very sophisticated Mk-30 drones crashed into a construction crane in Arizona.
A crane. It's not exactly a stealth fighter.
That's the whole concern. Amazon said the tech didn't fail, but that they had to update their visual landscape inspections. So if your drone can't reliably see a giant stationary crane, can we really trust it to see a crop duster moving at 140 miles per hour and get out of the way in time?
That seems like a massive gamble. And speaking of removing safety nets, DJI and geofencing, what happened there?
Yeah, this was a big deal. DJI, the biggest drone maker in the world, they used to have hard no-fly zones built in. Near an airport, the drone just wouldn't take off, period. In January 2025, they switched that to just an advisory.
So the guardrails are gone.
They're optional, you get a warning, but you can just click OK and fly. DJI says, well, the regulations are clearer now, so the pilot in command should have the final say.
That sounds a lot like we don't want the liability anymore.
It creates a huge risk, and we saw it almost immediately. The FBI found a DJI drone interfered with a firefighting aircraft out in California right around when this change happened. When you remove that hard block, you're relying 100% on the operator's judgment.
And this all ties into the proposed foreign drone ban, right?
Yeah.
The Department of Commerce is looking at cracking down on Chinese-made drones, mainly DJI.
It's a huge shock to the system. Something like 90% of public safety drones, police, fire departments are made in China.
Why?
They're cheaper. A DJI Matrix might be $7,000. A comparable American-made one could be $30,000.
So if this ban happens, a small-town police department either grounds its drone program or has to find, what, triple the budget?
Exactly. It's a huge problem for local governments. But on the flip side, it's a potential gold rush for American companies like Red Cat. We're talking about a nearly $1 billion market opening up overnight.
Let's wrap up with the Jetsons' promise. Drone delivery. We've been hearing about it for years. Is it real? Is it happening?
It is real, and Dallas, Texas is the proof. As of August 2024, Dallas became the first major U.S. city with regular, commercial, beyond visual line-of-sight delivery.
So how are they solving that hitting a plane problem we were just talking about?
Different companies, different solutions. Zipline has a fascinating approach. They use acoustic detect and avoid.
Acoustic? They're listening for airplanes.
Yes. The drone is covered in microphones. It filters out its own motor noise and listens for the sound signature of a small plane. They claim it can hear one from over a mile away.
That is wild, using sound to see.
It's surprisingly effective. Small planes are loud. Wing Aviation, another player, relies more on ADS-B and airspace management. But the point is, if you live in parts of Dallas, this isn't science fiction anymore.
So, to bring it all back to our student listener, we have this rapidly professionalizing industry, a huge fight for who owns this guy, and this big shift in hardware.
The takeaway for that student is this. The Wild West days are ending. We're entering an era of standardization. If you get in now, if you learn Part 107, you understand the physics, you understand the data, you're not just becoming a pilot, you're an airspace manager. You're getting in on the ground floor of the biggest shift in aviation since the jet engine.
And for everyone else, the next time you see something buzzing overhead, just remember, that's not just a toy, that's an aircraft. And the person flying it has a lot more responsibility than you might think.
And a final thought for you to chew on. Aviation has been built on the principle of see and avoid for 100 years, humans looking out the window. As we move to acoustic sensors and complex algorithms, we're really asking, are we ready to trust the code more than the cockpit? Because that's where this is all going.
Scary, exciting, and
Yeah.
definitely worth watching. Thanks for diving in with us.